The next doctor is Dr. Chad Deal. I've known Chad for a long time, and look at this guy, more handsome than ever.
How are you
So
doing?
what's going on with you these days? You still doing a lot of Brazilian butts and all this great work?
Absolutely, doing a ton of those and also training a bunch of doctors. I think we're putting on courses now almost every other month. It's a hot topic. A lot of the news, reported deaths are actually been high, 1 in 3,000 according to ASPS, and so safety is paramount. There are ways we know how to prevent these, and so we're trying to educate as much as we can. The World Association of Gluteal Surgeons is a big part of that.
What are the biggest complications that have been occurring with this procedure?
So absolutely for number one, fat embolism, as we know now. This is very preventable. Studies are being done. There's a consensus statement that's reached by the plastic surgery group, but beyond that, the World Association of Gluteal Surgeons, a collective of surgeons all over internationally, have gotten together to prevent these. This is absolutely, in my opinion, a preventable problem, and are dedicated to that. In fact, the first meeting of that's going to be coming up in January next year.
Well, what do you think are the most important keys to preventing that?
In my opinion, first and foremost, we know that fat needs to be delivered in the fat. We said this. In fact, you and I think, were at that 9 years ago at a talk. We talked fat in the fat. A lot of people are putting it in the muscle. You do get better take in the muscle, for certain. But the problem is you are going to injure the superior and inferior gluteal veins eventually, all right, and you're going to have a fat embolism in that case. So the key is, what techniques can we do to keep the fat in the fat? Right now there's a big push to ultrasound, always putting the fat in under ultrasound. I think probably the biggest technique is actually positioning of the patient in exactly the porthole where you place the fat. So from medial to lateral placement, a little hole just in between the buttock is probably the best approach. Hard to place the fat into the vein or damage the vein at that point.
Let me ask you, actually this is probably more interesting to me than them, but what size cannula are you using to inject the fat?
Typically a 4. To inject. So, you know, the smaller parcel size, we've already said, you're going to always increase surface area. The smaller parcels of fat, particularly like when you're really getting to nano fat and you're transferring the face to the hands, it's going to live better. The problem is the smaller parcels, the smaller cannula, the less safe it is cosmetically. So a little bit of difference of opinion, but I think probably now the average, you'll see 4s, maybe even 5s. Okay, so maybe not as much fat take, but much safer. Hard to injure a vein with a larger cannula.
How long does a typical procedure take you to do?
If we're just harvesting the fat off of the back and tracing the buttock, it can be as quick as 1.5 hours. If you're starting first in the supine position for the patient prone to get as much fat as you can need, or at least the patient wants full body contouring, 2.5 hours. Still not that bad.
You know, it's amazing. I've seen some of your cases. I think this guy does some of the most beautiful butt work I've seen of anybody. But I mean, these people come in, they want a nice big round butt.
They do, and you can, there are techniques that exist, the technology's there, it's grown up so much in the last few years. You could do incredible work all in one stage, and if it does take that second stage, at least they still look good in the first.
So you warn them ahead of time that a certain percentage are going to need to come back?
Sure, but I would still say 90% plus. It's a one-stage procedure, and nothing's more transformative. You're not just getting the buttock shape, right?
Yeah.
So much of the buttock is about taking the fat around it to frame it versus just placing it in it. Just really good liposuction, good sculpting. I don't even like the term liposuction too much these days. It should be liposculpting, is going to get you there.
You know, it's a good point. I always said, you know, doctors aren't really the best artists. We're usually very good technicians. You don't want to take your car to somebody who's a good artist. You want to take it apart and put it back together.
Yes.
But what you're doing is really sculpting.
Absolutely, and so the idea of high-def lipo kind of brought us that. It's the way I like to describe it is the difference between a cook and a chef. So a cook follows a recipe. A chef knows what he wants his dish to taste like at the end. So it's all about being an artist. You're not following a recipe. Every patient is different. Their contours are different. The fat is different. You know this. You go into some people, it's very fibrous. Even people who haven't been operated on before. And some, it's very, very soft. So it's about being an artist. Notice what you want your patient to look like in the end and whatever it takes to get there.
Are you ever worried that you don't have enough fat on your patients? They come in with unrealistic goals?
Yeah, but with really good contouring, you can get most people there. And there's a lot of research in this. A lot of people have had that kind of Sculptra, buttock augmentation. And there's actually a lot of buzz right now surrounding Radiesse. Hyperdiluting the Radiesse, not only do you get the initial fill with the Radiesse, but you're actually causing enough of an inflammatory reaction, building up the collagen that over the course of several treatments, and there are ongoing studies based on this. A lot of them are coming out of Latin South America right now.
Okay. All right, so what else? What are the other big procedures that you're working on these days? Have you gone into something new or different?
There is something I'm doing new. I don't want to say too much because it will be a proprietary thing, But you know, about 5 years ago, there was a lot of buzz around how to do augmentation with just liquid only. We have figured out a solution to get it to last more than 2 to 3 days, more than just, if you just put saline in a breast, it will last you 6, 7, 8 hours. We now have a solution that can last about 2 to 3 days. So if a woman wants to come in and see what the breast will look like, we can now infuse it through a completely awake, painless, 5-minute procedure, make a breast up to 500 cc's per breast in a solution that will last. We're calling it the Weekender. We haven't quite done the big burst yet with social media, but it works. I've done the side-by-side studies versus saline, and I'm keeping the formula right now kind of secret.
Well, you know what? This is great for dating. I mean, if you're going to meet somebody for lunch and you get to meet them for a couple of days, you might be a little bit surprised the next week.
It's cheating a little bit, okay, but it's a lot of fun. It's something that works great. And honestly, for anything, before someone goes into surgery and they go through that, to have that preview and to know, is this something they like? And in fact, even sizing. Up to 500, you know, what size do they want? So it's a good opportunity for them to do that.
Pretty good idea. It's a pretty good way of seeing what you need, too.
Absolutely.
How close is it to, if you put in 500 cc's, is that going to be approximate of what you need for an implant?
It's extremely close. So of course the implants, in many cases, I'm putting them under the muscle, you lose a bit of your volume. So if you were to put a 500 cc, it may look closer to maybe a 400 cc if it were above. And all of this fluid's being injected directly into the breast tissue. Mm-hmm. So you have to compensate a little bit for that when you're going into the muscle, but pretty close.
That's some good stuff. I hope we didn't steal any of your proprietary information there.
Not yet. Not yet.
So, okay. Your practice now is just strictly cosmetic. Mm-hmm. Have you gotten the stem cell buzz at all, or you're just too busy?
Man, I love, in fact, you know, it's taken a lot of guts. It's taken people like you, in fact, specifically you, to take on, well, I have to say it, big pharma, big government. A lot of money involved to defend what we should all have the right to do, which is make our patients' lives better, both functionally and cosmetically. And it took a lot of guts, and you deserve a lot of the accolades for that. We're following very closely the hard work that you're having to do legally. A lot of us are really rooting for you because we hope to see that patients win and physicians win, and government and big pharma doesn't win in this case.
Yeah, well, if we lose, look for my wrist size so they don't pinch these wrists when they take me away.
I don't know if everyone knows this. I don't know if everyone really researched it, but Dr. Berman has taken on a very, very tough fight, and he's done it on his own almost. And all of us are going to benefit greatly if he can win this.
Well, I appreciate that. Listen, you know, the government's looking at a lot of our cosmetic procedures. If they're right about what we're doing with stem cells, theoretically, when you move fat around, you're doing, you know, the same thing.
Exactly.
It's a surgical procedure, taking about fat and moving it.
100%.
Okay, so now you're still using regular implants, right?
We are. You know, the implants have really grown up. You know, everything from your softer to more firm implants. Textured, of course, is beginning to fade out again. It's actually kind of its second fade, if you will. It faded out many years ago. Concern was affections in the past, and now there's these extremely rare cancers. Again, very, very rare. But now it's beginning to make them less popular.
Have you ever seen one of those cases?
I have not. And the way I really try to describe it to my patients is, look, when you get to statistics it's more dangerous on your drive-in to the office than it is of you developing one of these cancers. At some point, you have to understand what these risks really are. It is extremely rare. It has only actually been with one company, I believe, and it's only been with textured implants. So the hype and the concern around it should really die down. Unfortunately, that's not the way it always happens.
It's amazing. I don't think I've had one patient come in and even mention it. No. And I mean, we do capsulectomies all the time. Let me ask you something. That's a good question. When you do a capsulectomy, are you sending your capsules in for pathology all the time?
I mean, if they're calcified, I always do. If they ever have any of the, sometimes you'll see some black discoloration, which can represent a fungus. Certainly, sometimes if I see that their operation overseas, you tend to see more of these mycobacterium and other more rare fungus, and then I'll send them in. But if it's just a little bit of a thickened capsule, the Baker grade isn't too bad. No, generally I don't send them all in.
It makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, we'd just keep the pathologist working all day long.
Right.
Hey, Dr. Deal, so good to see you.
Very good to see you.
Terrific. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks for coming in.